Morning. Welcome to the Friday brew, the Christmas brew, with a little scarf. Bit childish, isn't it? But there we go. I bought that jumper from, or this jumper from the City store, Manchester City store, a good few years ago now, online. Obviously, because I'm in America, as you all know, and I've been here for pushing 12 years. I've not even been back on a holiday. Can you believe that in that time? Absolutely insane. But time flies, you get busy, you're working, you're doing stuff, you're living life, and time flies. And as you get older, of course, as we all know, it just flies in even quicker. Basically, because we do have responsibilities. I've touched upon this before, that's what it is. That's my theory anyway. You know, because when you're a kid, time can really drag. You know, the summer holidays last forever, or even a day at school lasts forever. Like 9 to 3, you're like, oh my God, bloody hell, I've got to be here till 3 o'clock. But like, as an adult, the days just literally fly by because we've always got something to do. So we're not really kicking our heels as much. So yes, there we go. I've got my little notes in the corner. Not a script, a few notes, because as you know, I've got a rubbish memory. Well, here's the thing. I've got a rubbish short-term memory. Ask me what I did 25, 30 years ago. I'll tell you. I'll tell you what I was wearing, what I ate. Well, maybe not that minute detail, but again, it's a funny thing as well, isn't it? How you remember so much from the past, but in terms of like, sometimes you can put something somewhere, like a set of keys down, and then literally 2 minutes later, you've like, what was I in here for? And then you completely forget what you're looking for and what you've left behind. It's just bizarre. It's really weird. Getting older, it's just... But anyway, so yes, I do have a few notes in the corner, just a few things which I want to talk about. So yeah, let's start off with saying, well, it's been a while since I made my last brew. And since then we've had I should say as well, speaking of brews, I've got my cup of Twinings. Liam Gallagher there. Nice little orange mug that I bought quite recently. In fact, you know what? I'm going to start this with a sip. So, yeah, we've had Thanksgiving. And that was a while ago now. Obviously, we're almost at Christmas. So, Thanksgiving, for anyone who isn't aware in the UK, is the fourth Thursday in every November. Now, the fourth Thursday is usually the last Thursday, but not always. But irrespective of that, Thanksgiving is always the fourth Thursday in November. So it's just a little bit like an extended Christmas dinner. Look at it that way. Family tend to get together and, you know, where possible. Sometimes it's difficult if you're living in different parts of the country, like we've got in over here with my wife's sisters. She's got several sisters. They're all living in different places. All got their families, they've got loads of nephews and nieces and stuff, so it's really, really hard for everyone to get together. So we just tend to do like immediate family who are living in the area, there or thereabouts. So, you know, my father-in-law and my father-in-law's wife, which isn't my mother-in-law because he married again after. In fact, he's married 3 times in total over the years. So, good for him. You know, why not, if you can do it? So, but yeah, so usually with those, and obviously they've got like their extended family, and there's my wife's cousins and her auntie. So yeah, there's a few of us, and there's a couple of other like younger kids as well. So we all kind of get together, and you know we just have like the turkey and put out some like potatoes. Well, you know what it's like. It's the usual kind of. Just think of it like I say, like a bit of a Christmas dinner. It's the same kind of thing, and you'll have something to eat, and you just have a chat. And you chill out and you overindulge, I certainly do, in terms of eating, in terms of drinking. And then you have some like treats, some cookies or like something, like, for example, my wife's auntie made these things called butter tarts, which are kind of like mince pies, but like a bit creamier, really. And so we had those. I had several of those, it was ridiculous. And some like mince sort of chocolate cakes and yeah, so that's it's just an extra, any excuse, isn't it, just to eat. Sign me up. I'll sign on the dotted line. But 1st of January, gone on a bit of a health kick. In fact, actually, I know you're all rolling your eyes, but I have recently-ish, up until the last couple of days, been eating really well. And in fact, not just so much eating well, but cutting back big time on the amount of junk. You know, so I'm eating a lot of fruit and veg, drinking a lot of water. And I'm not even joking, but you do notice a difference. Even after like a week, well, I'll speak for myself, but I start to feel every time I do this, a lot more livelier. I've got a bit more of a zip about me. I just feel less sort of clouded in my head. I can think straight. And yeah, it just makes all the difference. They are, or you are, what you eat, as the saying goes. So yeah, I'm going to really crack on with that. Maybe not on the 1st of January, actually, just changed my mind. Because, you know, there'll be some Christmas food left over, New Year stuff. Maybe a few days into the year, into 2020, I'll crack on with some healthy eating. And in an ideal world, if I want to reach my optimum weight in terms of what I really technically 100% should be, which is ridiculous because that'll be like kind of athletic level. But if I wanted to do that, I'd have to lose nearly or about 2 stone. It's quite excessive. I don't think I need to lose 2 stone. I'd say probably 1 and a bit, maybe. I'll go with that. Anything more than that, especially 2 or more stone, that's too much. But I do want to start to be able to actually, you know, fit into my t-shirts and jumpers properly again, because it's been a struggle in more recent years. Again, another thing that happens when you get older, it's just easier to put on weight. It's more difficult to lose that weight. I'm sure most of you watching will know exactly what that's like. So it's just part of life, isn't it? So that's that. We had Thanksgiving. I'm not going to lie, there was a little bit of a minor argument between, again, one of my wife's, or 2 of my wife's cousins. Two of her cousins, so they're a brother and a sister. Not a massive, it wasn't fists weren't flying and it wasn't shouting and screaming, none of that. But a little bit of a disagreement when it came to politics, obviously. Always causes division, doesn't it? So, yeah, basically, well, politics-ish. It was more sort of like what is accepted in life and society and all that kind of stuff. For example, one of the guys in question, who shall remain nameless, Alex, not me, wasn't me, he was saying that basically, it's up to parents to control what their kids watch, basically. Because in this day and age, there's a lot of like gore on TV, a lot of language, a lot of violence, all that kind of stuff. And then his sister, again, no names mentioned, Emily, she was saying that basically it's not acceptable, and that there should be a moral obligation of people like who control what's on TV to control what's on TV, so it's not influencing young kids. Because she's got a couple of kids, and one of them was in fact, they were both round our house. An older one who's joining the Marines next year. But he's really chilled out. He's a nice lad. He's only 17. Very mature. I found out with a lot of Americans as well, by the way. A lot of Americans are very mature in comparison to Brits around the same age. Like teenagers and stuff. I'm not saying everyone, obviously, but most kids are very well, they've got their head screwed on. In the UK, it's just like, absolutely not, for the most part, really aren't. So yeah, and then he's got his younger sister, who's only 3. It's a bit of a gulf there. And so basically that kind of argument, I say argument, it was just a slightly heated discussion that it kind of went back and forth. And it got to the point where everyone else in the room wasn't really saying anything as these two were going back and forth. Like a tennis game, it was kind of like that. You're looking back and forth thinking, bloody hell. But then it got to the point where you stop looking, and when you're looking at the floor, you think, I can't look up, this is getting a bit embarrassing now. And then eventually it kind of petered out. Of course it did, but that was funny. But what can you do? It's families. That's what happens, isn't it? People do have these disagreements. Apologies, by the way, if the lighting's really bad. It's kind of a little bit dark-ish outside, just because of the time of year. Maybe I could put a light on, but I'm sure you'll live. It'll be fine. So that was that. And I'm not going to lie and say, oh, it was terrible. I loved it. I love drama. As long as no one's getting hurt or anything like that. If it's a little bit of a heated moment, I absolutely love it. Like fly on the wall stuff. It was great. So I enjoyed that. Not gonna lie. And to be honest, my stand on it is, yeah, I do think people should really watch, or whether it's what they call that, the BBC FC. I can't remember what that thing is. The classification board, or whoever it is who's deciding these things, what are going on TV and what is going on in movies. I do think that they do have an obligation. Well, of course they know that anyway, that's the point of them. But maybe sometimes a few things do slip through. But ultimately, I do tend to agree with Alex, not me, honestly. I do tend to agree with the other Alex who was talking, that once all is said and done, you should really control what your kids are watching. If you know something dodgy is going to be on the telly, or it's a movie which is potentially risque, then don't put it on. You know, just use a bit of common sense, have a bit of nous about you. And yeah, it's sort of, both of them were right. This is the thing with the argument. Both of them were right, but they were going at each other. And then it kind of moved on a little bit politically in terms of, like, you know, Donald Trump came up, of course he did, who's been impeached. A lot of people making a big deal out of that as well. That's another topic. I'm not really going to dwell on it. But yeah, it looks like, has it been announced yet? The last I heard, I've not watched the news for, well, today. But the last I heard, the votes came in, he was going to be impeached, whether it's actually confirmed. But he's not going to go to jail or anything. So a lot of people, again, on social media, we all know what it's like, of the echo chambers. A lot of people think, oh, that's it. They see President impeached, and they think, oh, he's going to go to jail. No, he's not going to go to jail. He's just been impeached, and then he'll get away with it. So it's no story, basically. Bill Clinton was impeached. I think people either forget that or they don't even know it. But again, he got away with it. It's not a big deal. So there's that. But over in the UK, of course, we've just had another election and a new, or a continuation of, the Conservative government. And I've got to be honest, I posted a tweet about this, which I may or may not put on the screen for you to see. But I allowed myself to, because of Twitter echo chambers, I allowed myself to get carried away with optimism from all the people on my Twitter feed, or most people, who were hell-bent on saying it was, oh, this is going to be, Jeremy Corbyn's going to win, this is going to be the one. And, of course, he didn't win, and Boris Johnson and the Conservatives, the Tories, they absolutely obliterated Labour. Labour's worst result since 1935. And Boris Johnson's numbers, as I put in the tweet, are up there with Margaret Thatcher. And it's just a massive, overwhelming mandate for Brexit. You can't argue with that. I said, I've never really dwelled on it on my channel, but I did say, probably about a year ago, that Brexit will happen. It was always going to happen. But this, I suppose there was a bit of a doubt for a while with this whole kind of, you know, second vote, people's vote, second referendum. That's clearly not going to happen, and Brexit will go ahead. The only thing I think we can all hope for is like, you know, on the other side of the world, is that it's a Brexit which somehow keeps everybody happy. So the ones who wanted a clean break and the ones who wanted to remain. It's very difficult, isn't it? But I think it could be done. What I'll say about Boris Johnson is, yeah, I have a lot of concerns. I think most people do. I would, if it was Jeremy Corbyn. I would if it's any government. I think it's right that we kind of treat them with a slight bit of suspicion. But the one thing I will say about him, in my opinion, is he does have authority. He does capture a room. When he speaks, you want to listen, or I do anyway. I'm not necessarily saying I agree with him, but he's got that aura about him. He has that character. He's very authoritative. A little bit like Margaret Thatcher, a little bit like a lot of Tories over the years. It's a very conservative style. And the only other person in recent times from Labour who has been anything like that, in my eyes, anything like that, was Tony Blair, who started off amazingly well, and then it all rapidly kind of went wrong. 9/11 is kind of what screwed him over, the whole, you know, going to war and all that kind of stuff, with Iraq and Afghanistan, all the Middle East. But before that, I thought he was doing an amazing job, and under the circumstances, an amazing job. And but his reputation for most has been tarnished. But I quite like Tony Blair. He made a lot of mistakes towards the end, but I thought he started off really well. But anyway, with Boris Johnson, he does have that thing about him where when he speaks, you kind of listen. And I think that's what the UK needs. It really does. I'm not sure if Corbyn would have done that, but I do like Jeremy Corbyn on a personal level. When I say personal, I don't know him, but you know what I mean. He comes across as a nice man, a man who means well. I think so. But yeah, like a friendly kind of uncle or a dad or a granddad. He's got that kind of thing about him. But for a leader, I'm not sure. And going forward, Labour, there's talk. Don't worry, I'll finish talking about politics soon. But there's talk about Rebecca Long-Bailey being Prime Minister. I mean, really? Really? Again, I'm sure these are all really nice people, but in terms of leaders and stature and representing the country and speaking and having people respect them and overseas respecting them as well, someone who can stand there and has this kind of a bellowing kind of voice and persona, I don't think she's got it at all. She's very thin and lightweight and tiny and almost timid-like. Not for me. Maybe in the future, but not for me. Richard Bergen, maybe in a few years, but not right now. Then you've got the likes of Emily Thornberry. She's thrown a hat into the ring. She no, I can't see her getting voted in. Again, I like all these on a personal level, but Prime Minister's not a chance. Keir Starmer, maybe. Maybe. I think he does have that look about him. He has that kind of voice. I think he kind of captures people's attentions. Maybe Keir Starmer could be a potential Prime Minister. Who else have they talked about? Angela Rayner, no. Jess Phillips, no way. Labour just don't have anyone. So I can't see, in 5 years' time, 2024 election, I can't see how Labour are going to get in with any of those as the leader. But it's a few years, so we'll have to wait and see. So I think the Tories are on for a decade of dominance, if not more. But time will tell. It'll be what it'll be. All I want at the end of the day, which I'd hope is what everybody wants, which is just a fair society, you know, where we don't want people starving, having food banks and all this nonsense. We don't want people out of work. We don't want people on the streets. We don't want crime. We want more police. But some people may want less, but I want more. I don't really want them armed, ideally not, unless it's been big cities and all that kind of stuff. And we want more hospitals and nurses and doctors, obviously, and housing, just all the infrastructure, public transport, public transportation. We want all that in gear. I just want a fair society. I don't like the idea, personally, of billionaires, just in general, to be honest. Why do they need all that money? But then again, the flip side, if they've earned it, fair enough, but they should be taxed to the hilt. The more money you've got, the more tax you should pay. It stands to reason. But anyway, that's a party political broadcast from the Blue Tonic 78 party. I'll be going for Prime Minister in the future. Or maybe President. Imagine that. I'd do a better job than Donald Trump, I think. But let's move on, because that was a long kind of introduction, wasn't it, about politics, and you've probably all fallen asleep. So that was completely pointless. So let's start off with one I've been watching. So there's a couple of things, and this one is on a Blu-ray that I picked up. There's 2 seasons, or series technically, because it's a UK show, but they did make an American one, which is just an abomination. It's so bad. Admittedly, I've not watched it all, but I've watched a bit of the first episode, and I've seen the ending, which is dreadful. But this programme I've watched, which is the UK version, came out in 2006. I was staggered when I mean, I suppose it all makes sense when I think about it. But again, that thing of getting older and time flying, it blew my mind when I saw this in 2006. But anyway, it's Life on Mars. So, yeah, from the BBC, this is season or series 1. They made 2 altogether. And there's been rumours of a 3rd one for 2 or 3 years now. I think I heard the BBC knocked back a 2-part spin-off. I don't know why they do that. That's a bad decision. I thought it would have been a massive, massive hit. But who knows, they may do it again in the future. So, yeah, basically, you've got Sam Tyler, what's his real name in the... John Sims, I think. It doesn't say on the front. Of course it doesn't. Brilliant. So, yeah, but I think it's John Sims, and he plays Sam Tyler, who's a detective, and then there's Gene Hunt, and basically, well, such a great character. Philip, is it Glinster? Can't quite remember. Again, why don't they put the names on the front? Don't they know I've been making a video about this and need the references? But yeah, anyway, so basically, it's set in, well, here's the thing. Sam Tyler is in 2006, so the modern era as of the time of making the TV show, and he's a police detective, and he gets into an accident, gets hit by a car, and he gets into, he goes into a coma, or does he? This is the thing, no spoilers, although you've probably seen it. And he gets transported, or is it in his head? That's the thing, to Manchester in 1973. So he basically, he's living a life, he wakes up, you know, from this coma, if he's in one, and the whole world has changed. It's very barren and industrial, like the north of England would have been back then. And yeah, it's just him trying to find his feet. Think like, where am I? What am I doing here? And he soon joins, well, not joins, his character in 1973 works for, what's his name? Gene Hunt. So they just, you know, solving crimes, and ultimately getting rid of all the bad guys and making the city a safe place. But there's a lot of kind of politically, what would be deemed now, politically incorrect stuff going on. And I suppose in this day and age, hearing some of the words they use, it's a little bit like, oh, bloody hell. But you've got to remember, it is replicating and representing a different era. So in that sense, it's all about context. So when it's like that, and not just done for shock factor, I'm fine with it. It's not a problem, although it is a little bit maybe because we're not used to it, we're not accustomed to it. So certain words, which I'm not going to repeat, yeah, we wouldn't really use that today. But when it's all contextual, I think it's perfectly fine and very much in the vein of being used for artistic purposes. So yeah, it's really good. They've got the fashion kind of spot on. Not that I remember 73, because obviously I wasn't alive. But it looks great. I love the music from that kind of era. There's a lot of browns and beige and oranges, and yeah, I can see why a lot of people think it looks pretty ugly from that era, but I kind of like it in a very sort of retro way. It looks kind of cool. But yeah, so I really like it. It's really good. He's got his kind of love interest, John Sims, Sam Tyler, called Annie, Annie Cartwright, who, you know, pretty hot, if I say so myself. Hope the wife's not watching, probably is. Going to get a thick ear later on for that. So, she's on the crew, as are a few others. I just really like it. Obviously, there's season 2 as well that came out, and then they wrapped it up. But then after that, of course, there was Ashes to Ashes, which did that have 2 or maybe add 3 series to that? I'm not quite sure. I started to watch the first one. I did get a little bit bored because it was sort of more of the same, and ultimately I kind of missed the chemistry between Sam Tyler and Gene Hunt and all the others. So even though the others were kind of in that second series, Ashes to Ashes, as well, it kind of missed him, to be honest, Sam Tyler. So I got bored of it. But I will go back to it, because Ashes to Ashes was set in the 80s, and whilst I was a very young kid, and that's an understatement at the start of the 80s, so I can't really remember that time. Nonetheless, it'll be really interesting to watch. So yeah, Life on Mars. I'm not going to go too much into detail about what happens in all these episodes, because you probably would have seen it. There's a lot of references, which... It's funny, actually, because I watched, just before I made this vid, I watched a really, really brief review. It's like this person who does reviews, although he hasn't made a video for a few years. And I'm not subscribed, I don't know who he is, but he made a quick kind of... I just randomly typed it in, and his was one of the first that came up. And he did a quick review, an American, of this, and he said it was really good. He did say it was set in 1971 in London. Why do Americans all think everything in the UK takes place in London? I get that here as well. Sometimes when they say, "Oh, where are you from? London?" I'm like, no. I used to say no. Now I just go, yeah, near London. Yeah, you know, just why not? I can't be bothered to go into detail. But yeah, so he was wrong. It's not in 1971. It's 1973, and it's not in London. It's in Manchester. But apart from that, he was saying it's really good, and he was saying there's a lot of references in there that that he didn't get. But of course he didn't get them, because you kind of have to be British. Like, if anyone is around about my age, or of course older, you'll remember on the BBC they used to have that kind of like, what is it, like a static screen? So like kind of an ident. Is ident, you call it? I think it's like a screen, like they do them at Christmas, BBCs. Again, I'll put a few examples on TV. And the specific example is what I'm talking about, with that kind of the young girl who's holding that kind of toy, and it's a bit creepy. And they kind of have that in the show, and it sort of comes to life a little bit from time to time. Or is it? Because it might be in his dream. Or is it a dream? Is it a coma? Again, no spoilers. Or is it actually happening? That's up to you to decide. So, and Americans not going to get that, because they didn't have that in the States. That was very much a British, a BBC thing. And there's lots of other references, because I've watched this with my wife, and she didn't understand a lot of the references, and I had to explain them to her. And when I did, she was like, oh, that's kind of cool that they put it in. And I still, sort of Easter egg, if you like, to people who either remember the 70s or the 80s, because a lot of it was a crossover. So, but anyway, enough of that. Life on Mars, amazing, really, really good. I mean, we're talking kind of 10 out of 10 stuff for me, quite frankly. So that is that. You have got to watch it. It is so, so good. And then maybe, if and when you watch it, check out Ashes to Ashes. Like I say, I've only started to watch it, and that was a few years ago. So I'll no doubt I'll watch that in the future. And then the other thing that I've watched, I don't have a physical copy of this because it's been on Netflix, and it's The Man in the High Castle, but season, because it's American, so we switch from series to season, season 4. Now, I've watched season 1, 2, 3, of course. I didn't just dive on in there with season 4. I've talked about it before on a brew, or maybe on a few brews. I know I definitely have talked about it at least once. And it's basically about an alternate reality. So what would have happened if Nazi Germany would have won World War II? And in this alternate reality, basically they've taken over America because they won the war, in this alternate reality. So Germany controls pretty much most of the planet, so it seems. certainly almost all of America, apart from the west coast of America, which is controlled by the Japanese, again, who were also in World War II fighting on the side, ultimately, of Germany, the axis of evil. So, yeah, you've got all the west coast, where I'm at, controlled by the Japanese, and the rest of it is pretty much controlled by Germany. And they're kind of on the same side, but there's obviously a bit of tension between Germany and Japan as well, because ultimately Germany wants to control the whole lot. So that is that. So basically, yeah, you've got your main character, which is Juliana Crane, and then you've got the main bad guy, who's really kind of a good guy, but not, called John Smith. John Smith, in this alternate reality, used to fight for America, but of course America lost the war, and then he clearly transferred through to joining the Nazis, essentially, and he progresses through the ranks, leading all the way up to, like, one of the highest leaders, or the highest leader that you can get. And the story really is about, it's funny because it's about, not literally funny, it's about his struggles coping, because remember, he's American, essentially, used to fight against the Germans, but now he's been taken over by the greed and the power. He doesn't really agree, ultimately, with what's going on, but it's his way of life, and he's got to protect his family. So how does he protect his family? Well, he has to do what he's told. So he's making a lot of decisions, and he's doing things that he really doesn't want to. He knows they're wrong. It's a real battle of wits, a battle of minds, because he knows that really he's making some really bad decisions, which is going to negatively impact good people, but he feels he has to do it. So he's quite ruthless, but you definitely do see that battle of emotions. He's thinking things through. There's certain things he does in the show, like, say, regarding his son and his family, his two daughters, his wife in general, and himself, where he lies. He has to cover things up. He does things, like he assassinates a couple of high-ranking German soldiers because he was going to get found out. And if he'd have got found out, then his family would have been punished. So you can clearly see, and it's a really interesting dilemma, or dynamic, I should say, because it's him being at heart a good guy, but he just can't fight the Nazi regime, if you like, because he knows he's got to do wrong. So you've got that interesting dynamic going on, and then you've got Juliana Crane, who kind of joins the resistance, and that whole story is about these tapes which come into kind of production, circulation. And these tapes essentially show the alternate reality. So there's an element of sci-fi. Now, this is based on a book, The Man in the High Castle, by Philip K. Dick, who did, what book did he write? Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which ultimately became the movie Blade Runner with Harrison Ford. So, yeah, the book is, or I should say the TV show is very much based on the book, but they've changed a few things. They've changed quite a few things, actually. So, for example, I think in the book, it wasn't film that people were kind of circulating of an alternate reality, which is in the TV series. I think it was it magazines or maybe books? But in the TV show, it's movies. So basically, these movies which come into circulation show an alternate reality of the Allies winning the war, as opposed to the TV show, which is focusing on what is happening in that era, i.e. the Germans won the war. So a lot of people are seeing these TV kind of show reels, if you like, these TV movies or these films, and they're going, well, what's going on here? Because this is weird, because Germany won the war, because here we are living in Nazi Germany, but why do these films show the Allies winning? And they couldn't work it out. So essentially, again, it's kind of left to you to kind of determine, is it real, is it fake, is it some kind of mind tricks going on, is there an element of sci-fi? There is. And I say that not as a spoiler, it's kind of revealed early on. So there is an element of time travel, but there's not a lot of time travel in it. I'd say 90% of the show, 90% of it is dealing in that Nazi Germany and focusing on John Smith and his family, and also the resistance, who are obviously trying to bring not just John Smith down, but the whole Nazi empire. So it's really good, the whole series. I will say that season 2, I think it was 2, could have been 3, the first few episodes were really, really slow, and it was a bit of a struggle to watch them, but eventually it got back into the swing of things for me, and I ended up really enjoying it. I had read a lot of bad reviews and watched a couple of bad reviews about season 4, and so when I started watching it, I thought, oh my god, is it going to be really bad? It was getting like 2 out of 5. But the funny thing is, after every episode, and there's 10 altogether in season 4, I think there's 10 in every one. So if you've not seen it, there's 40 for you to catch up on. But yeah, I started watching on season 4 the first sort of 3 or 4 episodes, and after every single one, I was like, this is really good. What are people complaining about? Now, I know what people are complaining about. I won't spoil it, but what people are complaining about is the ending. And the ending's not particularly great at all. It's not awful. It's not awful. I can understand why people didn't like it. But basically, you've got a situation where John Smith, he could have... The way the show was panning out, he could have made a few different decisions. And I thought he was going to do something which probably would have been like the happier ending, if you like. I thought he could have done something which I would prefer to have seen, but it didn't really make sense. Again, I can't go into too much detail. Most of you won't watch it, but just those that do, I don't want to reveal it. But if he had have done what could have been the happier ending, it wouldn't have been quite right. It probably wouldn't have worked for all sorts of reasons. It kind of would have half worked. So what he did and what happened, he had to do it in a way. And in a way, it's probably the right thing to do, given that he was struggling with, you know, what to do and all that kind of stuff. So maybe it was the right decision to make once all is said and done. But I can understand why people didn't like it. I don't think it was as bad of an ending as people made out, but it could have went the other way. But I thought under the circumstances it was okay. But other than that, the actual literal ending, where you see things kind of coming onto the screen, again, I'm sort of talking in code, I appreciate. I thought that was rubbish, and it was a little bit kind of an ambiguous ending, and which I don't mind, those kind of endings, but it just could have been explored so much better with all these, let's just say, people kind of moving around and coming back and forth on the screen. It was just a bit lame. That could have been done a lot better for me. There's not going to be a 4th season because, like I said, it's based on the book. So what you see is what you get, and that is that. And then the only other thing I'll say about the show is, and I do really recommend it, there's a few slow-burning episodes, season 2 or season 3, but really, honestly, you've got to take my word for this. I'd say there's, well, I'm not even going to count them. There are so many examples of being taken by surprise, like the shock factor, like where I just literally, almost literally, was open-mouthed, thinking, I can't believe that just happened. You know, wow moments, where you're expecting a character to do something, and then they do the complete opposite, or something happens to them, and you're like, I did not expect that. It blows your mind. So, yeah, it kept me enthralled, I've got to be honest, all the way through. It's one of the best TV series, or seasons, now series, I guess, that I've seen for a long time. 4 seasons altogether, 40 episodes, but I really recommend it. So it's The Man in the High Castle. If you like your science fiction, although there's not a lot to it, that's kind of the undertone to it. But your alternate reality, the element of Nazi Germany, and Nazi America as well, of course. So if you like the idea of that, then give it a go. Give it a watch. I think you'll really like it. But stick with it. Stick with it. Even if it takes you years, just start watching it. The Man in the High Castle. It's on... I was going to say, is it on Netflix or Amazon? I can't even remember now. I think it's Amazon. Now I've said that, it's probably going to Netflix. Either way, you'll see. I'll put it up on the screen. Or maybe I have already. So, yeah, give it a watch. It's really good. Alright, stop for a bit of a swig of tea. I'm not going to go through these individually, by the way, because the video's going to go on a long time. I don't mind, because it's a Christmas special, so if it's going to stretch over an hour, probably, but that's fine. It's not going to be 2 hours, like the old Friday brews used to be, which is insane. But I'm just very quickly going to go through some of the Christmas movies that we've started watching and we're going to continue to watch over the next sort of, week, or less than a week now until Christmas, isn't it? And maybe for the rest of the festive season as well. So, firstly, we've got National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Oh, put it on screen. In fact, I can't even see if it's fully on screen because I've got these silly little notes and annotations. Let's move those. So, yeah, we've got that one. Red Spine. There we go. So, yeah, I have seen this. Obviously, most people have. It's a little bit controversial. I do like it. It is good. It's quite funny in places. I just don't think it's as good as a lot of people make out. Is that bad for saying that? I don't know. It probably is going to be bad when I say this, because this is probably something that people think is rubbish. I quite like, in a very cheesy way. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's Jingle All the Way. Brilliant. Absolutely cheesy, with Arnold Schwarzenegger trying to get this Turbo Man toy and for his son, and for Christmas, and yeah, I won't go into the plot. It's very, very predictable and cheesy. But I like it in a very sort of Christmassy, festive, feel-good way. You know, what else can you say? Next up is Will Ferrell and Elf. Now, I've seen this more times than really I should have done, because it's one of those movies that my wife likes to watch pretty much every Christmas. We've all got those kind of movies, haven't we? That it's like a go-to movie, especially if it's like a Christmas thing or once a year, once every now and again. It's all right. It's quite funny in places. I'd recommend it, but I have seen better. Now, speaking of kind of nostalgia, even though I wasn't, but bringing it up, we've got this one. It's nostalgia for me, and it's Dudley Moore from 83, maybe 85. Yeah, I knew it was 85. What did I say, 83? And it's Santa Claus the movie. So, a very, very, very cheesy movie. But again, a really, for me, a feel-good. Like a lot of these movies are, aren't they? Let's face it. A feel-good film, and one that really takes me back. It really does take me back to being a kid, 6, 7 years of age. And, yeah, just having fun and watching it. I'm sure, was there a Santa Claus the movie sticker album? That seems a bit dramatic and a bit, you know, why would there be? Because it'd be a bit weird collecting it throughout the entire year. Maybe it was like, maybe my mind is just playing tricks. Maybe it was a book or something that I got, or maybe there was a set of stickers that came in a magazine like Looking, if anyone remembers that from like the 80s, which I think continued through to the early mid-90s. So maybe it was that, I don't know. Now we've got this one. I don't recall us watching this one yet. I did buy it a couple of years ago, if not more. And it's a Disney movie, and it's starring Jim Carrey, and it's A Christmas Carol. Now, obviously, the traditional movie, A Christmas Carol, is an absolute classic, and I've seen several of them over the years. It's just a brilliant, brilliant movie, and yeah, what more can you say? But I don't think I've seen this one. I think in places, is it slightly animated or completely animated? It sort of looks that way on the back. Maybe there's an element of CGI if it's not an animation. I'll have to see. But yeah, I did obviously buy it with the intention of watching it. There's the spine, which you need to see, of course, and it's a slipcover as well. So, yeah, I just haven't got round to seeing that yet. And a couple more. This is a bit of a classic as well, another Disney one. It's Mickey's Christmas Carol. It doesn't last too long, but again, an absolute classic in another slipcase. So we've got that. I have seen that a fair few times. And then last but not least, arguably the greatest Christmas movie ever. No, not Die Hard, because it's not a Christmas movie. Stop saying it is. It is not. Well, yeah, but it takes place at Christmas. So what? So does Gremlins. That's not a Christmas movie either. But whatever. They're both good movies. Don't get me wrong. It's just not a Christmas movie. Arguably the greatest Christmas movie of all time. Not so much the second one in the series, because this is a box set, and certainly not the ones after. But the original Home Alone. What an amazing movie. I remember like it was yesterday watching it at the cinema in 1990. I went with my dad. I didn't go with my mum. My sister didn't go. Yeah, I don't know why. It was just me and my dad. But who cares? I don't care. I got to watch it, and it was absolutely brilliant. So I suppose my sister would have been very young at that time. 1990. She'd have been like 4. So, 4 or 5. So, yeah, that's probably why she didn't go. But yeah, I absolutely love it. It's an amazing movie. It's a timeless classic. Can you call it a classic? 1990? I mean, it was a long time ago. It doesn't seem a long time ago, because I remember it. Again, it's that thing, it comes back to that thing of getting older and time flying and, you know, all that sort of thing. But it seems still quite fresh in my mind, 1990. So, yeah, I absolutely love it. A feel-good movie. It still looks great. The plot is fantastic, although obviously very far-fetched. And I would love to see another game. Maybe not a game, actually. I think the Mega Drive, the SNES versions weren't too good. But I would love to see another movie starring Macaulay Culkin. Now, I know a lot of people say it might tarnish the franchise, but it can't tarnish it anymore. They had Home Alone 3, I think 4, 5 and 6 have been made. They are woeful. I've not even watched them, and they're woeful. I've just seen a few clips, and I will never, ever, ever watch them or own them. I am not interested in the slightest. But the first is amazing. I do like the second one as well. I'll certainly let it slide anyway, but the first is an absolute and utter classic. And yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing a reboot. Just don't do anything stupid. Don't change the names of the characters. Don't make Macaulay Culkin a female. Don't do anything silly. Just make it, you know, like kind of in the here and now, a modern remake. Even if it sounds silly, even if it's Macaulay Culkin having his kid and leaving him, you know, home alone. Even if it's just the same old thing, I wouldn't mind seeing that. just for a feel-good movie, because I think that's sometimes what society's kind of missing. And once again, we kind of go back to that argument that those two, well, disagreement, those people had. My wife's two of the cousins, and the other cousins, like the other brothers, were kind of, or sisters, I should say. Well, one brother and two other sisters. Well, three other sisters were kind of like, oh bloody hell, you know. No, two other sisters. It's a big family. I lose track. There's too many people. It's ridiculous. But yes, it goes back to what they were kind of talking about. You know, how society's kind of changed, and I kind of agree to a degree, as I touched upon before. But I would like to see a return to those kind of feel-good movies, like the 80s and the 90s. They had a lot of them, didn't they? You know, there's a lot of TV series as well. There was less seriousness back then, or so it seemed. I think social media, which is rich of me to say because I'm making vids on it, you're watching it. So when we didn't have all that social media back in the day, it just seemed as if society was a lot more, ironically, kind of engaging and more tolerant, I'd say. Definitely more tolerant. Maybe less engaging, of course, because technically social media has made us more engaging. But society was more tolerant, and it just seemed fun. There was less, or it appeared as if there were less bad things going on. Maybe there weren't in reality, of course. Rose-tinted glasses. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is I love movies from the 80s and the 90s that had that kind of feel-good kind of vibe to it, and I'd love to see them return. Cheesy movies, why not? Make people laugh again. Everything doesn't have to be violent. There's a time and a place for it, and I love violent movies, don't get me wrong. But there's a time and a place. I'd just like to see the reintroduction of more and more kind of feel-good movies, especially kind of Christmas stuff. And cheesy action-style 80s movies. Bring them back. Bring them back. And Beverly Hills Cop 4. That's coming next. But that's for another vid. Probably in a few years, maybe. So, there we go. Now, let's bring up my little notes and we'll talk about what I've been reading. Yeah, now, I've just started to read this book, so I'm not going to elaborate too much. But basically, you've got, if I can just... Sorry, it doesn't mean anything to you, but I'm just moving across the screen this little notepad that I've got open, which is kind of annoying. So, yeah, I'm reading Dr. Socrates. So, Socrates, not the Greek philosopher, but another philosopher in his own right. Look at the spine, and look at that. Bloody hell, I did that quite recently. That annoys me. I'm so annoyed by it, I'm actually going to put a bit of tape on that, on the behind, so you can't see it as well. It just winds me up. I know you don't care. It does bother me. But yeah, I like the spines. Becoming addicted to buying books now just because of the spines and the artwork. So, not reading them, obviously, just buying them just for the sake of artistic purposes. I am reading them. So yeah, basically, like I say, it's not the Greek philosopher Socrates. It's the footballer, the Brazilian footballer, passed away, I think, when was it? It was a few years ago now. Very sad, of course. Played for the likes of Santos and Fiorentina in Italy. He played for, what are they called? Garforth Town. He came out of retirement when he was 50 to play in the English non-league football in pyramid system for one game. It was obviously a bit of a sort of promotional stunt. But nonetheless, he did play a game. I think a few others played as well. Was it Lee Sharp? Did Correca play as well? Again, maybe just a game or so. And there probably would have been others. So, yeah, rich businessman, chairman, owner, and wanted a bit of publicity. So what better way to get it than getting some kind of legends to come out of retirement, you know, for one night only, as it were, and to don the old Garforth Town shirt or whatever they were called. So yeah, a really good footballer, kind of iconic, and a brilliant visionary as well. But not just was he great on the football pitch, and I specifically remember him, I was very, very young. It goes back to the kind of Santa Claus the movie era, 85. It would have been the 86 World Cup, and I remember him vividly with like the headband on, and he just looked really cool. The beard, the headband, the soaring heat of Mexico in the World Cup, and I remember it from my Panini World Cup sticker album as well. And yeah, just brilliant nostalgic memories. And so, in fact, there we go on the front. He's got like a headband on there as well. But also Socrates, he had a medical degree. So this wasn't just your ordinary footballer. This is someone who had a degree, a medical degree. He was very politically savvy. So a lot of people looked up to him in terms of what he said and what he did. So he kind of lived his life, at least how he saw it and how a lot of people also saw it, as being quite a shining example. So off the pitch, on the pitch, a bit of a leader and a visionary. And I've only just started it, like I say, it's quite a thick book. And but yeah, I really interested in getting to grips with this. So That's Dr. Socrates, bit of a Brazilian footballing, or just a footballing legend. Yeah, very much recommended if you like your football, which you may or may not. I did hint about football vids returning in my last vlog. Doubting it again now. We'll see. Maybe, maybe not. I am the master, as you've probably known after all these years, of saying I'm going to do something and then just not doing it. Music vids is the other one, which I do keep meaning to do, and I'd like to do it eventually, but we'll see. Speaking of music, though, let me show you what I've been listening to recently. And I've got a really eclectic taste. I do listen to pretty much anything, within reason. I'd say the only exceptions, I'm not into rap. There's a few songs here and there I don't mind, but it's not a genre I listen to. It just sounds all the same. Not interested. I don't like death metal. Anything which... My rule of thumb is if you can't hear what they're saying or roaring, then I'm not interested. So all that seriously heavy stuff, not interested. But in terms of heavy metal, yes, I do like that. In terms of glam metal and glam rock, yes, I do like that, and we've got an example to show you in a second. Obviously, pop music, yeah, I love pop music. Rock music, indie, Britpop, alternative. And when I say indie, I don't mean Indian music, although I do actually quite like Indian music. But I say that because I remember back in one of my first jobs, BRT Bearings it was called, and the manager called David, won't reveal his last name just in case. I remember him asking me, like, he was 50-something, maybe 60-something at the time, and I was like 17, and I remember him asking me when I just started the job, the early days, he said, what kind of music are you into? And I listed a few bands, like, at the time, Oasis and Blur and Shed 7 and the Blue Tones and Suede and Cast, Britpop music. But I did say Britpop, and I went, kind of indie stuff. And I remember going, Indian music? Now, why do you listen to that? Racist. And I was like, no, not Indian music. Indie, as in, independent, alternative, kind of Britpop music. And he didn't get it. I went, just thinking like the Beatles, but sort of a modern version. And he was like, oh, yeah, okay, fair enough. I've got to say this in case I ever forget. I'm sure I'll mention this in the future, but that very same manager called David, he, in the 60s, allegedly, he was in a band and he was recording. I don't think they had any hits or anything, but he was recording some stuff. He was a drummer. He always used to go around the bloody building everywhere, on everything. It just used to piss everyone off. It really did. But it didn't matter what it was. It could be the front door. He'd just be doing that everywhere. And it just, it wound people up chronic. It was crazy. But he said in the 60s that him and his band were recording a song, and on that very same day, the Beatles, like, get this, apparently, the Beatles were also recording in one of the adjoined studios. And apparently during recording sessions, they all got together and had a bit of a chat. Of course they did. Whatever, David. And but that's what he said, so maybe they did. And apparently, and I wish I could remember what the song was, it might come back to me. If it does, I'll mention it in the future. It's not going to come back to me, anytime today or anytime soon. But apparently, one of them, I think it was Paul McCartney or John Lennon, or they all went in there when David's band were recording. And would you believe it? That beat or part of that song ended up being on a Beatles album, on a Beatles track on a Beatles album. So he said that the Beatles nicked one of their songs. Absolute, what's the word, David? Bollocks, I think, quite frankly. But that's what he said, so I just got to, believe him or not. But I always remember that story. But even back then, as a 17-year-old, I was looking at him going, oh, really? Really? Oh, did they really? Oh, you met John Lennon? They were recording? Were they really? They stole one of your songs? Unbelievable. Chinny Beard on here. Chinny Recon. Or what other alternate versions you have. Chinny Beard, Chinny Recon, Tutankhamun. That's one from the 80s, I suppose. When people are like kind of lying, but you don't want to make it obvious. Is that a fact? Really? Oh, wow. Used to do that all the time. So anyway, moving on. I've been listening to this. This is a really good album. It's Motley Crue. And it's the album Dr. Feelgood from 1989. I think it was the follow-up to their Girls, Girls, Girls album, which came out in 87. So they'd gone through a lot of turmoil. They'd kind of given up the booze and given up the drugs, allegedly. And, yeah, now, I've got to be honest, I'm not a massive fan in the sense of I'm not particularly knowledgeable when it comes to Motley Crue's back catalogue. But I am a fan in the sense that I do quite like what I have heard. And I do like that kind of genre of music, glam metal, hair metal. I think it's cool. For me, it's that feel good. Dr. Feelgood, there we go. But that feel-good vibe of like the 80s where people didn't really take themselves too seriously and it was all about having fun. Party attitude, have fun, and yeah, today's really serious, isn't it? Or at least appears more serious, at least, than back in the 80s, and the 90s for that matter. So, yeah, but other bands like Poison, Guns N' Roses, who else have we got? Kind of like Bon Jovi, not an expert on them, but yeah, they're kind of roughly the same kind of hair metal rock. We've got Def Leppard, a modern version, I guess, say, a modern band, modern-ish, The Darkness. Essentially, they're doing what these bands did in the 80s and the 90s. So, and I really like The Darkness. It's a little bit of a, what's the word, where you like something? I can't quite, what's that word where you like something? It's like a, what's it called? Can't remember. Guilty pleasure. I had to make an edit there because I spent like the next 20 seconds going, what's that bloody... Again, you get older, the mind goes. But I'll tell you what I was bloody wearing 25, 30 years ago. Crazy, isn't it? So yeah, it is a bit of a guilty pleasure, this kind of music, and The Darkness in general as a band. So yeah, I like it. I've got to be honest, some really good songs. Dr. Feelgood, the title of the album, of course. Kickstart My Heart is possibly my favourite track, or it is right now. Same Old Situation is a good one. Yeah, it's just a good album if you like that kind of hair metal, kind of pop rock music and guitar solos and big hair and glam, then you're probably going to like this. And if you like stuff like this, you'll probably like stuff from the 70s, like T-Rex, Slade, you know, Mott the Hoople, David Bowie. They're all connected. Music is all connected. If you look at pretty much any band whatsoever, they have been influenced by something, and it's all connected. So whenever you get people who say that, oh, I hate such a genre, even though I did say before I'm not really into rap, that might be a slight exception, I suppose, because it is so different. But when you do get someone who says they don't like something, it's like, okay, well, fair enough, obviously you're entitled to your opinion, but it is all connected, so maybe you should just, maybe give it a try. Maybe. He says, having slagged off rap music, and country music as well is another one. Oh, God. I don't mind the odd track here and there. You know, Dolly Parton, I don't mind. I don't mind Dolly Parton for two reasons. Obviously, you know what I mean. So, but I do quite like some of her songs. She seems a really nice person as well. Of course, I don't know her personally, but she seems quite nice and friendly and all the rest of it. So that is that. So I think that's it in regards to what I've been reading, listening to, and watching. So the only thing left to talk about is what I've been playing lately. And it finally gives me an opportunity to talk about what's on the screen behind me, which is a game called Moto Racer on the PlayStation 1. Now, don't be fooled. Do not be deceived by the front cover, which looks really, really cheap and like rubbish. You could be forgiven for seeing this and thinking like, oh, is it like a greatest hits or just cheap rubbish? This is amazing. Oh, that's a slight exaggeration. No, actually, I'm going to stick with that. This is an amazing game. You can probably pick this up in the UK for £1 or £2, and probably in the States for £1 or £2, or wherever you are for that matter. If you're living somewhere else, this is not an expensive game. Black spines, of course, which look really cool. And the best way I can describe this is think of Ridge Racer, but on a motorbike. That's basically what it is. It's got that kind of arcade-style feel to it. It's obviously not a simulation. It's a little bit twitchy in places, but of course it would be because you're controlling a bike. But it's a very arcadey kind of feel to it. The early levels, the early tracks are very much kind of almost inspired, if you like, by a Ridge Racer or a Daytona with like the sun and the beach, and there's a desert scene as well in the background of the track that you're racing on. There's a couple of indoor tracks, or maybe they're outdoor and it's dark with floodlights on. I can't quite work that one out. Probably is outdoor, I suppose. But either way, I'm not a massive fan of those. They play fine. It's just I'm not really into dirt bikes. I'm more into kind of like the bikes in the outdoors, the sun shining, and like I said, that kind of Daytona Ridge Racer look. Or what's the game on the Sega Saturn? Oh man alive, Manx TT. Was it Manx TT? I think it was. I really liked that as well. That was maybe a little bit more twitchy control-wise than this, but I did like that game, and that's another one I do want to get back, unless I've got it hidden away somewhere. Probably do. But yeah, so I really do recommend picking this up. If this was like 20, 30 quid or more, then I'd understand if you'd be hesitant. But you can buy this for £1 or £2. Buy it. I want to see you all buying this on your pickup vids. No exceptions. Buy it. And then when you do, a And when you play it, you'll be like, bloody hell, Alex, this is amazing. You were right. Especially for a pound or two. You cannot go wrong. So, yeah, I really like it. What I'll say, though, is it's a very short game. I've finished the game. I think there's 3 difficulty settings. A typical arcade settings. You know, choose your bike. There's a few different bikes with different, you know, handling and speed and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, you know, there's not a lot of choice. This is all pre-DLC, of course, so it's quite limited. Although, speaking of DLC, kind of, what I love about this era is it harks back to a time where, do you remember, because obviously we didn't have DLC, so what would happen is if you completed races, excuse me, if you completed races, or if you completed the game, you would unlock different courses, tracks in reversal mode, you would have different bikes, different characters. On the PlayStation era, that's your reward, more often than not, for games. You get what would now be DLC, but back then you didn't pay for it, now you're paying for it. Which I don't mind if it's done correctly. I've got to be honest. DLC, if I personally, and I suppose it is subjective, but when it comes to modern games, if I've really enjoyed a game and I feel like I have got my money's worth and I really like that world and that environment and that universe, then if the price is right, I am personally very happy to pay for more content. It's when I feel like I've been hard done by, or if I feel, which I guess is connected, if I feel it's been left out of the game, then I've got a bit of an issue with it. So I probably won't buy it, or I'll wait until there's like a severe kind of price drop. So I need to swig a tea here. You need to see Liam's little chops there again. So yeah, but anyway, going back to the game, yeah, I like it. It's really good. There's only 10 tracks. When you when you finish the game, which is like the championship mode, you know, presumably you don't just do time trials, I think, or single races and all that kind of stuff. You when you finish the championship mode, when you finish in first position, which I did, first attempt, it's quite easy, I will say that. But I did play it on the hardest setting. I imagine that does, the difficulty is ramped up quite something. But at the end of that, when you complete that, you have your little kind of presentation, like a cheesy sort of, it's not FMV, but like a cartoony 3D cut sort of scene. And you have that, and you present it with your trophy on the podium. And then you unlock the reversal mode. I've not started that. So I don't have any save space left, actually, on my PS1 memory card. So I can't quite, well, not can't quite, I just can't save it at all. So I need a new memory card. But when I do, I'll obviously save my progress and all the rest of it. But it actually doesn't bother me that next time I go to play this game, or in the future, if I ever want to have to save it, I'm going to have to do it all again. That doesn't bother me because it's so addictive to play. The longevity may not be there in the sense that there's 10 tracks, plus the reversal mirrored modes on top of that. So it's not a lot. You do kind of breeze through them. There's not a lot of bikes to choose from. But the handling of it's so arcadey, the handling of the bikes is so good. It's just a feel-good game. It's a good game, and for so cheap, it's an essential purchase. I know, actually, they've got Moto Racer 2 on the PS1. They've got a third out. I'm not sure if the third came out on the PS1 or the PS2. There may be a couple of other spin-offs. And they have got a fourth one, which I've only just recently been made aware of, on the PS4, but I've heard mixed reviews about that, so maybe it's not too good. It might be rubbish, I'm not sure, but I'll probably get that in the future. Way down the line. It's not even on the radar, it's not on the shopping list. It'll probably be like an impulsive pickup way, way, way down the line. So anyway, Moto Racer, get it, it's really, really good. And then last but not least, what I've been playing, again, this is much like Motor Racer. These are relatively, well, very new pickups, which will be on a pickup speed very, very soon. But nonetheless, I've been playing them, so I'm going to talk about them. And this game, it's funny, I thought this would go for a lot more money than it does. I didn't think it would be a crazily priced one. But you're looking at like a tenner or even less. And it's Star Gladiator on the PlayStation 1, obviously. Made by Capcom, as you can see there, from the creators of Resident Evil. I'm going to butcher this, but I'll do it because it just makes me laugh. On the start of the menu, when you load the game up and the voice comes on, he goes, Star Gladiator. It's almost like a Scotsman who did it, which is just really unusual. Don't have a go at my Scottish accent. I'm part Scottish, so that was very genuine. Maybe not. So, but even though he does say Star Gladiator, as it gets towards the end of the tour, he turns American. So it's kind of like Star Gladiator. It's really weird how it works. It's really bad. You're going to have to listen to it, trust me on that one. But yeah, so I had this game. It came out in 1996. I had it back then in that era. So when I think of this game, it takes me back to like Euro 96, and I can almost feel that kind of feel-good vibe. We've been talking about feel-good vibes throughout the vid. So I can feel that feel-good vibe of, you know, it's coming home, Euro 96, it's hot, it's sunny, June, July. It reminds me, not just this game, many games do from that era, but this is one of them that do. And I remember buying it from Game, didn't know anything about it. I saw it on the shelf, it looked cool. I love like kind of the purple sort of background, the cover to it, and kind of reds and maroons, and, you know, it looked very dark and enticing. And it was a fighting game. I turned it around and I could see the back, and I thought, that looks really good. Made by Capcom, Star Gladiator sounded cool, from the creators of Resident Evil, another thing. All these things were going in my favour of buying this game, and I thought, do you know what? I had kind of 40, 50 quid, whatever it would have been, burning a hole in my pocket back then. I wish I had 40, 50 quid bloody burning a hole in my pocket now, you know, really, really do. But back then I was just throwing money away, burning it. It was ridiculous. Burning It like the KLF, if anyone remembers those. Great band, by the way. Great band. So, yeah, and I remember just buying it on a whim. I took it home and I really liked it. What I'll say about it is it's just a standard game, really. A fighting beat-em-up game. 3D kind of polygon look. It is 3D, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of got that, not just a polygon, it's kind of got an element of 2D. It's not 2.5D, but there's a slight element. It's not a full-on 3D game in the vein of like sort of like a Virtua Fighter or a Tekken. It looks better than that. It's aged better, but at the same time, of course, it still looks a little bit kind of very PlayStation-esque from that mid-90s era. Control-wise, it's good. I found that it feels, but it might have been just the character that I was using, because he had this kind of big sword. In fact, it probably would have been this guy. It doesn't say on the front, but he's called something like, I can't quite remember, like Hiratio or Hirato or something like that. I'm sure that's what it is. That was the default character that I went with. It's the very first one, which is on the screen. And so because he's controlling this sword, if you want him to kind of like, you know, wield that sword, when you press a certain button, it might have been the X button, I think, or whichever one it was, it seemed to take a while for him to lift it back and then hit the opponent with it. But it did feel really powerful. So maybe you could say, potentially, that the developers did that deliberately. That slight delay in button movement, because he is holding such a big sword and maybe it takes him a while to lift it and hit it. Maybe I'm just making excuses for the developers, but if they did that, then that's quite clever. But yeah, it's okay, but it does have that slight sort of delay, a very slight delay. But yeah, I didn't read the instructions in terms of moves. I was button bashing. I will be honest with that. There's no point lying. And again, there's no point lying. I did finish the game in one straight go. I didn't use up any continues. Started the game, finished it on the default difficulty setting. So I didn't lessen it. I didn't increase it. I think there's 10 fighters, so I kind of pretty much breezed through it. A couple of characters are really weird to look at. But again, there's a couple that are really cool. They look really, really good, like proper kind of enemies. Like, God, that looks good. Good design there. So, again, not an expensive game at all. Probably pick it up for less than a tenner. Worth adding to your collection if you like fighting games, or if you're just a fan of PlayStation and maybe you want to try something new. It's got the kind of very much, not so much futuristic, but more of a sci-fi kind of element to it as well. So I do recommend it. It's a Capcom game as well, so, you know, it's made by people who know what they're doing. So, Star Gladiator. Really good, and I recommend it. So, yeah, there we go. That wraps it up for this Christmas Brew special. It's a little bit shorter than what I thought it would be, actually. So, after that kind of political intro, I should say as well that, personally, I don't really care who's in charge. I know a lot of you might. If it had been Jeremy Corbyn, then so be it. All I want to see is just people getting on. I want to see a fair society. So hopefully we'll start to see that. Time will tell. Let's wait and see. Let's not judge a book by its cover. We'll have to wait and see on that front. So that is that. Other than that, yeah, I'll have a pickups video. That should be before Christmas. And I do intend to do the diary vid. Hopefully it'll be before Christmas. It might be before. It might be after. We'll have to wait and see on that front. And, of course, it wouldn't be my video without the obligatory mention, as I kind of hinted at before, talking about the music vid, which may or may not appear before the year is out. We'll see. But you don't have to watch any of these vids. But, of course, it would be great if you did. but don't feel obliged to, especially the music vids. If you're not interested in music, honestly, please don't watch it or give me like a sympathy comment or anything. Not interested. I don't mean that in a nasty way, obviously. I hope you do enjoy it. I hope you do watch it and all the rest of it. But it's just meant for people who like music. That's all it is. And if you're not into it, I guess the viewing figures will soon tell who cares and who doesn't. So that's that. So yeah, I'll save all the Christmas wishes until my next vid, because I definitely will have a pickups vid before Christmas. But just in case you don't watch that, then, you know, have a great Christmas, Happy New Year, all the rest of it. But I'll say it properly in the next vid, and maybe one after that as well. We'll see. And yeah, you don't have to watch them all as well, not just my vids, but anyone's vids, as soon as they go up. In fact, you might want to stretch them out, because I'm uploading quite a lot of vids, or the plan is, in a very short amount of time, a short space of time. So I think it's a good time, isn't it, to play catch up with vids. So maybe you might want to do that with mine. I know I'm going to do that with some of yours, because over this next kind of week or two, or whatever it's going to be, there's going to be a lot of time to kind of kill. There's a lot of chilling out, a lot of late nights where we know we're slouching in our chairs, having digested chocolates and drink and mince pies and Christmas dinners and whatever else for that matter. And what better way to relax in the early hours of the morning than to watch some YouTube vids? So maybe you'll be doing that and playing catch up on with my vids. Do what you'll do, it's up to you, of course. But in the meantime, thank you for my new subs. I've had a few. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't always tell me, but I have noticed my numbers have slightly changed. They've not changed dramatically. I think my subs plateaued about 5 years ago. But obviously every now and again people discover the channel, and that's great. It's always nice to see new people. So, I'll tell you what I'll do actually. Let me give a shout out vid. And please don't think I'm standing on anyone's toes here by doing this, because I know Pete's Nestastic. Pete, you're going to get a mention in my next vid as well, because I picked up a game which I know you'll probably like. I think you do anyway, or you like one of the games in the series at least. But I'll save that for then. So I know Pete recently mentioned this guy, and also Eddie Roller X Core, who I think I've mentioned in a few vids lately. It's like an Eddie Fest when it comes to recent times. So I think those two and others, but those are the two that I can think of recently who have mentioned this guy. So please don't think, lads, I'm stepping on your toes. I'm not. Obviously, everyone who watches your vids, I'm sure, has gone over to this guy's channel and checked him out. But I was going to do this a while ago and I just forgot. But both of you mentioning him made me think, oh yeah, I'll mention him as well. So it's a new channel called, oh Christ, what's it called? Carl's Room 70. Do you know what? I'm going to have a look now while I'm doing this. I'm sure it's like Carl's Room 70. He's just recently started. If I scroll down, how's this for live nonsense? Yeah, he's just recently, well, a few months ago, started making vids. Basically, if you like pickup vids, you will like, yeah, Carl's Room 70. So if you like pickups vids, you'll, I'm sure, like his stuff. He's got a massive collection of games. If you look behind him, like PlayStation 2, it seems like he's got bloody hundreds of the things. And he will have a collection vid soon. Maybe next year, I imagine, but whenever. So if you like your retro stuff, does he pick up current gen stuff? Maybe he does, but there's definitely an emphasis on the retro games, PlayStations, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, he's relatively recently started. He doesn't have too many subs, and we all know what it's like, don't we? When we start a new channel, especially in this day and age, you know, there's me whinging, well, not whinging, but saying, oh, my subs plateaued years ago. But I've got like 1,500 or something, and I know everyone doesn't watch. I understand, I'm not that stupid. I know how it works, but nonetheless, I do have quite a few subs in comparison. So, you know, when I started, it was a lot easier to get subs. Now it is so difficult, and what it relies upon is word of mouth, isn't it? It's me or you or whoever, Pete, Eddie, everyone else, giving shout-outs to channels and encouraging them to make more vids, to feel part of the community. And then, here's the tricky bit, it relies on people like you lazy bugger, to click on the link to check out Carl or whoever's channel it is, to check them out and to see what you think. And if you like it, hopefully you do, subscribe, just start watching their stuff as and when you can. Maybe interact. It's always a great way to get to know people, isn't it? You know, because there's a lot of silent people out there. I know there's a lot of silent people, maybe you, who watch my stuff and you never bloody comment. Lazy. Start commenting. At least every now and again. It's nice to show your face, isn't it? I'm a fine one to talk. I watch people and never comment as well. There's some channels I watch where I've never commented, but I regularly watch them. It's weird, isn't it? I guess it's kind of weird. I suppose you're just waiting for that right time to say something, but then so much time has elapsed, you kind of feel embarrassed to comment because it's been so long. we've all been there, and I think a lot of us are there and will be there in the future, but we shouldn't be. So maybe that's one of my New Year's gaming resolutions, YouTube resolutions to address. So yeah, check out Cal's channel, a new upcoming YouTuber, just doing what we all do, pick up vids, gonna do collection vids, all that kind of stuff, and just show a little bit of support. And yeah, going forward, I think I'd like to do a lot more shout-outs. We used to do it all the time on YouTube, and then it became a little bit old, a little bit kind of passé, and people just stopped doing it. I think people stopped doing it because people stopped clicking on the links. We became lazy in our own kind of inimitable ways. So yeah, please at least check his channel out. That's all I can ask. Especially over Christmas, you're gonna want things to watch, I should say. So click on Cal's channel, link in the description box. No excuses. Until my next video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you later.